the Backyard Professor Chess videos. It's dark outside, and I've been exploring a Grandmaster game several times through, and this is a great little game that I'm just dying to share with you. Having learned a little bit more about the imbalances of the Silman thinking technique in his chess course through his books, I am learning that the Grandmaster chess games are not so difficult to understand after all. And so I'm excited to share with you. Silman says go through the Grandmaster games and try to see how they utilize the imbalances to their advantage, because this is how they play. They will see an imbalance, or they will see some kind of a faulty opening or technique, and they will capitalize on it. So we have a d-pawn opening, and White pushed his e-pawn. Oh, this was played in Germany, 1975, by Zoller, who is white, and Borsdorf, who played the black pieces. Borsdorf has just retaken the piece, and he pulls out his knight, and he's challenging the pawn, of course. And he pulls out the knight to f6. Now we can see this balance of the knight is protecting the pawn. Well, the knight is attacking the pawn, etc. You know, the queen is protecting the pawn, and the queen is attacking the pawn. So this is a center opening, more or less. Now he attacks the pawn directly with his f3. And black protects this pawn in a very interesting way, but I think it's somewhat faulty. He brings the bishop to f5 to protect this pawn. Now, there's one advantage to him doing this that I'll point out in just a minute. Well, f takes the e4 pawn. Now, that's a pretty good looking center, but of course it's not going to last. You can see that, right? He retakes with the knight. Now, at this point, we see that black has the two pieces developed, and white only has the one, even though white has a central pawn, right? What pattern are we beginning to see here? With the instructions of the environment that different chess pieces enjoy, I began noticing that there aren't a lot of pawns in the center of this board, are there? Actually, there's not a lot of pawns out at all, is there? There's pieces, but pieces can move back and forth. Pawns can't. So this appears to me to be a fairly open board, right? You don't see pawns being locked in the center. There's not a lot of pawn activity yet in this game. That might be a clue as to how this game is going to be played. Well, he brings his knight to f3, and then he brings his pawn forward to e6. Now, you notice what's happening. There's a couple of very interesting ideas that I want to show you this. Number one, black has done the correct thing. He brought his bishop out first, right? And now that he's pressed the pawn, his bishop is a bad bishop. It's got the same light square as the central pawn, so it's a bad bishop, but it is outside of the pawn chain, so it's a useful bad bishop, all right? Another thing to notice here is he's keeping up with development, more or less, but look at the field here. That's wide open, isn't it? That light's kind of bright, isn't it? I don't know if I want it that direct or not. That might be a little better. Is that glaring? Yes, it's glaring like crazy. Let me shut it off. Yeah, I don't know if that's any better. I'll try it this way and see, and if it's not, let me know, all right? This seems really open to me. And the king side seems really open, right? What's this automatically tell us? There's no guesswork here. We know what this is telling us. Bishops love open boards, right? Right on cue. Hey, wouldn't you know? You'd almost think I played this game once or twice before I make this video. White zooms his bishop out here to c4 in the open field. Now granted, the pawn here is limiting his activity, but he's getting his bishop out, which is the activity piece you want in an open field. Black follows suit. Black zips all the way down here to b4 and puts the question to the bishop. Both players recognize, hey, this is a fairly open board. There's a couple of pawns, but this is a bishop's board, more or less, right? You see that? Well, white goes ahead and takes the opportunity to castle. And black, I think, begins his downslide here. I don't think in this particular board arrangement that swapping your bishop for white's knight was correct, because the board says bishops will flourish in this. Besides, watch this. Now he takes the pawn, of course. What do you think black's going to do? Now I want you to just notice something. Black takes the pawn with the knight. Now, how many moves has this knight made, right? I mean, you're talking 1, 2, 3 moves already. He's not really developing. No, white's not exactly Speedy Gonzalez here either. However, white is developing a little better and getting himself a better position. Of course, he threatens the knight. The knight's far enough up the board that this pawn can't possibly come up here and support him. So the fourth knight move, he simply moves it right back. So we got a pawn for a lost tempi, is what they call that, right? So at this point, white, I believe, is beginning to recognize the board is open. And this calls for bishop activity. So he puts the bishop on a3. Now look, we really see something interesting here. This long influential diagonal stops black from castling, right? And this super bishop here with this, they have a good crisscross going. He is limited here, of course. He can't move forward at this point. But in an open board with very few pawns, the influence of the bishops from white is really quite inspiring when we compare them with black's only bishop. This is one of the imbalances now. Black cashed his bishop in for a knight. So white is taking advantage of that imbalance, right? Well, I think at this point, white has the better game for it. Don't you? Honestly? Well, he brought his knight out. Well, now black is going to bring out his knight to d7. And he's going to push his pawn. Now, I want you to notice this. The idea is bishops love the open board, right? Well, white has just a single center pawn. I mean, there are no big, long, hairy pawn chains in this game. He only has one pawn, and he's going to get rid of it to gain himself more open space. Isn't that interesting? Otherwise, you see that pawn move and you go, well, what are you moving a pawn for? This very well could be the reason. I would speculatively propose for you to consider. He is pushing the pawn. The queen comes out to f6. Now she's got a long diagonal down to the rook. It's not a worry. She's not going to take that rook. But you notice because he's developing and he's catching up in development. See, development is only a temporary advantage, right? But so he's coming along pretty good, and because the board is open, he does have a good central knight. It is presenting some influence into the area, right? His bishop hasn't moved an inch yet. So mama comes out to play, so to speak, right? Queen f6. White exchanges the pawn. Notice he makes more space for his bishops than he already had. And there are just one mere pawn in the center. Everything else is pieces. This board is wide open. Put the pedal to the metal. Let's go down the interstate of the diagonals with the bishops, right? They love open spaces. This is very important to catch on to. There's another power that really enjoys the open board, right? You can almost see what white is going to do next, can't you? Based on what we know about the imbalances and based on which pieces like the open field and how the pieces move, right? Watch what white does. He brings his rook over here to d1, and now accompanying his bishops in the open board with their long, beautiful diagonals all the way across the board, why not put the rooks to play in with it too? So he brings the rook and he has a great file. He also has another really great file here. He also has another really great file here. And he also has another half file. Well, no, another full file. That's a bishop, not a pawn. Another file. He has potentially 4 files to work with here. Is that not astounding? It's beautiful how he uses this. How he does this is so fun. Well, black castles queenside because of the open field and because white is utilizing the pieces that love the open spaces, hence using the bishops, preventing the king side castle, black castles to the queen side. But look, watch. This isn't castling the king to safety because you have too many lanes into the king. You have too many diagonals into the king, into the queen side at that king. Don't you? It's a wide open field here. So this is not a safe place. Well, he centralizes his knight, bringing it to d4. Now look what he's doing. He is covering this open file, but he's exposing this one. Now, it's almost like he's been focusing on the queen side. Now he's going to do, it's a sleight of hand. Now he's going to do a bait and switch and come over to the king side. Keep your opponent guessing. Well, black responds by putting the queen over here on f6, or g6, I mean. No, yeah, g6, I'm sorry. Black has a okay position here. This is not just a walk in the park because look, all black has to do is here, and he's getting close to a good kingside attack with the checkmate. The very interesting thing is, I mean, you can't take the bishop because of the pin, so the next move after whatever white does could be bringing the queen down to take the g2 pawn and checkmate. But look how interestingly black has set this up. This central pawn is covering the f2 and the d2 squares. So you can't put a rook up here. If he was to do this, you can't put a rook up here to try to cover that pawn, right? Because you've got the knight. You can't put the rook here because you've got the knight, right? And you're thinking, well, you've also got the queen. You can put the queen to e2 and cover it, but then you run into this problem. Ouch! You know, skewer the queen and the rook. So black's not set up too bad, right? Moving this queen over kind of gives him a little bit of oomph, and white has to pay a little bit of attention. Well, white just knocks him out. White certainly has the initiative. White has all the open space. White has all of the diagonals because he's using both his bishops. White has the open files vastly superior to anything black has. So I would propose white has a screaming game here. Watch what he does for a knockout punch. This kind of jolts you. Boom, it's a cannon shot. Knight to c6, kaboom. And you go, are you serious, Shirts? For real? That's not such a hot move. Look, he sacrifices his knight, right? So this is how black responds. He sacrificed his knight. Whoop-de-doo. Are you serious? You're impressed with that? What this does in an open board is it changes the dynamic of the board just a smidgen. But it's enough of a smidgen, right? Because white has taken advantage of the environment of an open board and produced his bishops, he's taken advantage of the environment and he's put his rook, and his queen and rook kind of evolved in having open files also, but he brought in his entire army. He's using every piece here, right? Black isn't. Black hasn't used that rook. Technically, look, if you're not going to use one of your most powerful pieces in your game, you know, it's like being a piece down, isn't it? Truly. Again, this illustrates the Silman theme that he emphasizes over and over again. Use your entire army in your game and you'll improve your chess. True story. Because he's developed his bishop, now he pops up here to a6, check. And you go, ooh, ooh. King can only go to here. Interesting, huh? This is a little bit rough. Now watch what he does. Because he's been utilizing the open board, because he's been putting his bishops out, because he's been pulling his rook over and exposing the file for this rook as well, more or less keeping black at bay from doing much of a king side at all. Black never really even got into an attack, did he? No, he didn't. Watch what white does now. The logic is impeccable. Kaboom! You know that that commercial with the cleaners by, what's his name, the energetic guy, unfortunately died a few years. Kaboom, baby! White is cleaning black's clock! Kaboom! I ought to get paid for selling that, huh? Why, though, you ask, are you gonna lose the exchange? You know, you take a knight and you lose your rook. You know, white lost that exchange. What are you thinking? Look how the dynamic has changed. Step by step, using the imbalances of both your bishops, using the idea of open territory, using the imbalance of the rooks on the open files, right? White has had the initiative. He is calling the shots. Black is more or less having to virtually respond to white, and there's two pieces that prove this in many respects. One, you haven't seen the knight do a thing, have you? Well, I mean, he's guarding this square and this square, but other than that, he's not doing a thing. You haven't seen that bishop move since his first move over a dozen moves ago, right? Isn't that interesting? His entire development has just been right there, because white is coming at him with his positive imbalances at such a steady rate that black has to address everything white is doing. This is the kind of chess you want to get to where you play. That's why studying the Grandmaster games is so fun. Okay, shut up and show us what's going on. Well, 90% of you have already seen how white's going to wrap this up, huh? While I've been blabbing and gabbing. Let me show you what white can do. Because after black took the rook, he resigned. That's how good that move was. That's very interesting, isn't it? Zoller now has the opportunity to bring that queen right up to b4. Or you could move the queen across to b1. Either way, he's making use of that open file. Because Zoller had utilized the open space with his bishops, prevented the castling, forced the king to that side, and used that beautiful white bishop, the king only has one square to go to, a8, and then the queen hops up right there and goes checkmate. So again, fun to know how to see the effects on a chessboard of how the pawns affect what pieces you're going to move, huh? Because there were very few pawns in the center, that called for bishops. And white responded properly to the call by maintaining his two bishops, and black came down here and cashed in one of his bishops. So he kind of shot himself in the foot. That's why it's important to understand the nature of the chessboard, right? So you don't swap the wrong pieces. And then because it was open, and because white did everything, we saw him pushing that pawn until they changed it off, white did everything to completely get rid of all his pawns. So it didn't interfere with his cooperation. And it didn't, because we saw him pull his rook over to this open file and utilize it. And then we saw him bring his queen up to an open file on a long open diagonal, supported by his bishops, and come in there and checkmate that black king. White used his entire army. And you say, well, okay, black he wasn't able to use just one of his major pieces. How would you like to play a game when someone says, however, you can't have that rook? Hey, wouldn't you yell and protest? I would. Well, essentially, isn't that what black did to himself? You leave your second most powerful piece home. What's the point? He had 4 knight moves. 2, 3, 4. He was prancing around on his horse looking cool. He could have been developing that rook. 4 knight moves instead of 2 knight moves and bring out more of your army. That would have changed the nature of this game. Boy, had he had an open file, or an open file here, or even an open file here, we would have had a different game, right? You see that? So again, the imbalances help as you know what to look for and see them, and as you utilize them, and as you put the correct pieces into order, as you exchange correct pieces in a particular environment, or as you keep certain pieces in a certain environment. So that's what I wanted to show you. So thanks for watching my videos, and like I always say, happy checkmating and happy chess studying, and I will see you in the next chess video.